Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Asaf Ramarowski. I am the Executive Director of SPME and ASMIA, and it is my privilege and pleasure to once again welcome you to our webinar series show. This afternoon, we have the privilege and opportunity to talk to our friend Hussein Abdel Hussein. Hussein is a prolific writer and researcher. He's been an analyst and a journalist for many years. He's currently a research fellow at FDD. And he's really one of the most keen observers of the Arab world, to my mind, is worthy. Anything he writes is worthy of reading and highly recommended all around. He just recently completed this book that we are going to talk about this afternoon, The Arab Case for Israel. And there is many observations and many topics that need to be addressed here. Those of you who may know Hussein from his attending the Asmiya conference know that Hussein is a long disciple of one of our founders, Professor Fuad Ajami, and a lot of the work that Fuad did and really inspired the younger generation of Arabs and how they've seen their own view of the Arab world and their American identity. I think in many ways Hussein captures that. So I hope he's going to talk about that. He does devote a great deal as well to Ajami in his book as well. So that's something that to look forward to as well. Obviously, I encourage all of you to buy and read his book. Which is worthy of reading all around. So, as far as format wise, as to go over housekeeping issues, Hussein will talk about 30 minutes or so. Then we'll go into Q&A. Q&A will be done via the chat. We will do our best to get to all your questions. There's a lot of interest. We hope to get to all of them. If we don't, I apologize in advance. Please feel free to email us after the webinar, and we'll do our best to respond in a timely fashion. But really, without further ado, Hussein, welcome to the webinar. The virtual floor is now yours.
Thank you, Asaf, and thank you everyone for joining us and attending this session. Uh, my story is in this book. I called it the Arab Case for Israel, but it's really my personal account, a journey of transformation that I had, being born and raised and growing up in two countries, Iraq and Lebanon, that are not really friends of Israel. Um, it was a journey that took time and that unfolded over a few decades. But then I came to a place where I felt that peace, unconditional and immediate peace, is to the advantage of the Arabs and the Palestinians and everybody else in the region. And my journey made me think in a way that's much different. All the ideas about peace, I think we've tried them and they failed. And now I'm here to offer some new ideas. I think these ideas start from the point where Arabs and Palestinians stop seeing the word Zionism as a curse word. It starts when they make their peace with Zionism, the concept of Jewish nationhood and Jewish sovereignty. Now, of course, when I say it like this, it might sound easy, but were if you grew up in the Arab world, if you're an Arab and grew up over there, it's it's hard. It's an abomination. It's just asking people to give up on most of what they were taught when they were kids and as what they were growing up, go against their school, their friends, their family, the mosque, their whole lives. Now, of course, I'm not one of a kind. I don't claim to be such. I know that there are many people who had similar journeys like mine, and Arabs, that is, and today they stand where I stand. I only happen to be the loudest of them and the luckiest of them because I live in the safety of the United States, and I've been lucky to get enough support to tell the story that I'm going to tell you right now. This story starts for a kid who was of Shia background. My mom is from Lebanon. My dad is from Iraq. The way they're met is that their family is my Iraqi family. had to have a plan B because they thought that the communists were taking over Iraq. They started moving their assets to Lebanon. They met my mother's family over there, and the result was the marriage and myself and my siblings. Now, over this time, things were not, if you grow up as a Shia, Israel is not your primary concern, and the Palestinian issue is not your primary concern. Because for a few reasons. Number one, there's never a Palestinian who's Shia, or the Palestinians are either Sunni, maybe Christian, but there are no Palestinians who are Shia. Number two, there's not a single spot that's considered holy for the Shia in Mandate Palestine. All of it. There's nothing, no shrines. No imams ever walked in that part of Palestine. Number three, the holiest spots in Jerusalem, the Dome of the Rock and the Aqsa Mosque. The Aqsa Mosque was presumably built by the second Caliph, Rashidun Caliph, Omar. The Shia hate Omar because in their tradition, he took the caliphate from Ali, their first imam. The Dome of the Rock, the most famous structure for Muslims today in Jerusalem. This was built by the Umayyad Caliph Abdul Malik bin Marwan in 691. And the Umayyads are the ones who killed the third Shia Imam, Imam Hussein. So they hate the Umayyads too. So these two structures that are the focus of all this Muslim attention toward this whole conflict mean nothing to the Shia. And the reason why the Shia pretend that they mean something to them today is for political reasons that started after Khomeini took over Iran in 1979. So if you're growing up as a Shia, there's nothing religious connected to Jerusalem or the whole of Mandate Palestine. Now, let me add that in most Shia schools, they dispute that when the Prophet made his nightly journey and then from there ascended to the sky, they dispute that this spot was in Jerusalem. They think that it was in Kufa in southern Iraq. And if you go to the Mosque of Kufa in southern Iraq, which is one of the most important Shia shrines today, right after Najaf and Karbala, if you go there, you will find within the Mosque of Kufa, there's a spot until today that marks where Prophet Muhammad prayed before he ascended to the sky and came back. So this is just to say that if you grew up as Shia, then the whole Palestinian issue is not your thing. And this was my case. And my grandparents and the people I knew at the time, especially in Lebanon, they used to say the Palestinians sold their land and came over here to take ours. And this was, among all the Shia. Now, another thing is that the Shia in Lebanon, now, mind you, in the Middle East, not in the Middle East, excuse me, in the Levant, which is Israel, Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, in this part of the world, if say you have, I think the total population is 59 million. The Shia are only 2 million of the 59, even though they're the nosiest and the troublemakers because they have Hezbollah and they have all the rockets and but they are a minority. And that's how my maternal grandparents who lived in Lebanon at the time, they remember that when there was the Ottoman Empire, when they were kids, they remember that they were a minority. And when Lebanon came and was set up as a Christian state for the Christians, they thought that they had gotten a break because for the first time they were recognized as a big community, which is today 1/3 of the Lebanese population. Lebanon is 1/3 Christian, 1/3 Shia, 1/3 Sunni. So the Shia thought, okay, under the Sunnis, we were second-degree citizens, we didn't get anything. But now, in this small country, we count. So these 2 million Shia who live only in Lebanon, there are no Shia, like I said, in Palestine. There are no Shia in Jordan, zero. No Shia in Syria either, maybe like 50 families. And most of them are connected to my maternal family. So they're half in Lebanon, half in Damascus. But that's it. So this is to say that this whole conflict is not a Shia issue. And in Lebanon, when the Shia started organizing themselves politically, they started organizing along the lines of capturing a bigger share of the pie that is Lebanon. And the most famous Shia cleric at the time, who Hezbollah claimed that they, like him and respect him, Musa Sadr, who vanished, who disappeared in Libya in 1978. He said repeatedly that we're not going to fight Israel. We have to live, at least have the ceasefire, the truce at the time hold. And when Palestinians took South Lebanon and started launching attacks against northern Israel, Sadr was the guy who said enough is enough. And the Shia, his faction, his militia, the Amal movement, the party of Lebanon's Speaker of Parliament today, it started fighting with the PLO, with Arafat's guys. And that's why in 1978, when the Israeli military rolled in, they received them with rice and petals. This is where it comes from. The Shia didn't like that they had to face all the reaction from Israel coming to their villages and their homes. So all of this is to say that if you are Shia and you grew up at that time in that part of the world, the Palestinian issue would still not mean much to you. But still, as I was growing up, and as everyone who starts questioning everything they grew up with, if you want to break ranks with a tribe, if you want to endorse change and become progressive and become liberal, you go left, because you go to the what's called the Marxist, socialist, all these kind of parties, because these are the secular ones. Everybody else in Lebanon is either Christian or Sunni or Shia. These are more conservative religious types. If you want to stop being religious and conservative and become more secular, you become a leftist. So this is my transformation. By the time I went to college, I considered myself to be a Marxist guy. And of course, all these leftist types, they claim that they support democracy and they support the rule of the people. And if you look up all the names of all these lovely communist places, including the amazing North Korea today, you will see that they have the word democratic in their name. The Eastern Germany was called Democratic Germany. All of the leftist communist idea was based on the idea that they're bringing democracy around. So I believe this. I believe that, as leftists, we were spreading democracy, and that getting Palestine, kicking Israel out and getting Palestine instead, that was part of liberating the people, the nations, and getting democracy. Until the Iraq War. Now, this is my transformation. When the United States showed up and decided that we're removing Saddam Hussein and we're taking him out and we're spreading democracy, all the people who were like me supporting change and supporting democracy did not support the war. They said, "Oh no, this is imperialism. We can't really spread democracy. Now is not the time for democracy." And this is the starting point of where I broke ranks with everyone. And this is the starting point of my trip. At the time, thankfully, because I was lucky enough to go to the American University of Beirut, I had access to literature that others did not have, and I'm greatly indebted to that access. The Jaffet Library at the American University of Beirut has volumes nonstop for periodicals, for books starting 1890. And because I had access, I started reading, and I liked the idea of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I was fascinated by the idea that, people can decide their own fate. People can be citizens. People, can elect their government. And this made me start thinking, what are the Israelis thinking? Do they have their own university? Do they have their own Jaffet library like me? Are they familiar with life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? And this was when things became really hard for me because there's no access. If you live in Lebanon, your sources about Israel are mainly Edward Said, the late Columbia professor, Chomsky, and Finkelstein. Everything else would probably be censored. So I thought, okay, this is something that I need to work on. I need to learn the language. I need to learn Hebrew, and I need to learn what Israel is all about, uh, away from the noise. Now, this is also hard, but I still found ways, like I tell in the book, that this was the time when the internet was, putting all these newspapers online, and I found Haaretz. It was in English and it was in Hebrew too, and I'd print the same piece of news, judging by the picture, and I'd start comparing and try to decipher what the Hebrew side is saying. And then I found one spot in Beirut where I could park my car, and on the AM radio, I could get these Israeli channels, Reshet Aleph, Reshet Bet, Reshet Gimel, and I'd spend hours listening and deciphering. And because the Arabic and Hebrew have some similar things, or when they say the name of a famous person. So when they say Arik Sharon before there's the word Rosh HaMemshala, so okay, I concluded this means the prime minister. So it took me a long time, and it was really hard, but I figured it out. Eventually, I could read and understand Hebrew. And this gave me access by the time I came to the United States to listen to Israelis debating among themselves, among each other, reading their literature, how they think. And lo and behold, everything that I was taught, what the Israelis wanted, what they were planning, what they were scheming, the protocols of the elders of Zion, Greater Israel from the Nile to the Euphrates, you name it, all the conspiracy theories, all the anti-Semitism, all of it was not true. And the minute I discovered that, I thought, okay, now we need to figure out how to tell others. I had to tell others what I had discovered, and this is the start of my journey to peace. Now, this is my personal journey. The book also debunks a lot of mythology about the formation of Palestine as an ancient nation, of course, because now even Jesus is made to be Palestinian. And as someone who studied history and archaeology at the American University of Beirut, I trace back the start of this whole idea, and I say, listen, because I grew up in Lebanon, and I know that the Muslims in Lebanon did not want Lebanon, and by Muslims I mean the Sunni Muslims mainly. They thought that these colonial borders were drawn to divide the Sunni nation, the Muslim nation, and the Arab nation. So they rejected these Syria and Lebanon and Palestine and Jordan, and they thought all of these should merge into one big state, the Islamic state or an Arab state. So until 1990s, there were many in Lebanon who opposed the state of who wouldn't hold the Lebanese flag, because to them this is a colonial imperial flag. The Christians are the ones who created Lebanon for them because they're isolationist and they oppose Arabs and Islam. I discovered that the Muslims in Mandate Palestine had a similar behavior, and it made sense to me. These guys didn't really want Palestine as an independent state. They wanted to join the greater Arab nation, the greater Islamic nation. And when I started really digging, I found out that Palestinians never called themselves Palestinians until at least 1964. They always went by the ethnonym, the Arabs in Palestine or the Arabs of Palestine, because Palestinian at the time meant mostly Jewish, maybe Jewish and Arab, but everything Jewish at the time was called Palestine. The Jews advertised Palestine in Europe to attract people to come and help build Palestine. The first airline was called Palestine Airline. It was all Jewish capital and Jewish people who owned it and managed it. The first Palestine national team that played in soccer in the World Cup was all Jewish. So this is where things started appearing as different from the story that I was told, that's still being told, that this ancient nation of Palestine was all Muslim and all Arab, and it was taken over by these foreigners who showed up suddenly and took it. So I traced it, and I found out that there's a reason why in 1964 Jamal Abdel Nasser, the president of Egypt, who was the biggest pan-Arab leader, there's a reason why he instigated the Arabs in the West Bank and made them demand secession from Jordan and declare their Palestine. First reason was that he had just lost Syria, that left his United Arab Republic. Syria entered in 1958, left him in 1961. He was shopping for a replacement. He went to Yemen. There was a putsch, there was a coup over there, a civil war. The Saudis and the Jordanians made it hell for him. He sunk in a quagmire. He couldn't make Yemen join him. So to get back at the Saudis and the Jordanians, and this is all documented in the book, to get back at them, he instigated the West Bankers, who were Jordanians at the time. He said, "Okay, you must get your own state. Let's call it Palestine." And the irony is that when the Arab League came together to vote on recognizing the state of Palestine, mind you, the Arab League votes by consensus only, so any country can just stop any resolution. Saudi Arabia voted against the creation of Palestine in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. And they did that because they thought if there's this state, it'll join the Nasser United Arab Emirates, and Abdel Nasser was the rival. They didn't want that to happen. None of this history is told in any of the books, any of the literature that is circulating today in the Arab world. And I think if we start telling them, listen, guys, this whole Palestine thing is really new. I mean, it's not like 2,000 years. It started in 1964. Nasser wanted to get back at the Saudis and the Jordanians. After some history, I include in the book some literature, the anti-Semitism that came to the Arabs through European channels. This came to the secular Arabs, so Arab nationalists like Nasser. Their anti-Semitism was mostly European. But then when these guys lost the 1967 war, and they had to concede, so the armies lost, now militias had to take place, and also the Arab nationalists lost, so now Islamists were taking their place. As the Islamists started taking their place, anti-Semitism in the Arab world changed from being very much like Europe's anti-Semitism to being its own Islamist anti-Semitism. Now, mind you, this is my position about Islam. Islam and Quran is like any other religion. You can make it say whatever you want it to say. Scripture is really ancient. It needs to be interpreted. There are good verses about Jews in the Quran. There are bad verses about Jews. You take your pick. You interpret it which way you want. So what the Muslim Brotherhood did was that they highlighted the negative verses in the Quran. They interpreted them in a really nasty way, and they started depicting Jews as ancient enemies. These are enemies since the days of Prophet Muhammad. And of course, Iran, which imported, by the way, the late Ali Khamenei was the one who translated all the literature of the Muslim Brotherhood of Egypt into Farsi. So even though they're Sunni and Shia, but both of them are based on the ideology of the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, this said, the book also makes the case for why, if you are Arab and Palestinian and you think that injustice has befallen you because of the creation of Israel, your interest is best served if you let go of this injustice and look toward the future. Israel, the high-tech, superbly performing economy it is, the advanced country that it is really an asset for all these surrounding countries. If they just let go of the past and plug with Israel and become friends and allies with Israel, their lives will be much, much better than insisting of going back to a time that's in history. Look, if you look up the literature for the Palestine, the state of Palestine, nothing talks about the future. They're not saying we want to create a country that's based on liberty and equality and freedom and democracy. What they're saying is that we want to go back to the mud hut of our grandpa that we can see in black and white pictures. So there's really no program for the future. And the book says exactly this. And there's a chapter that says Palestinians look to the past, Israelis look to the future. So the book calls on the Arabs and Palestinians to do what the Israelis are doing and start looking to the future. And then it shows the receipts. It says, listen, of all the Arab countries that we have, there are three blocks. There's the block that has the Abraham Accords, and this is real, genuine people-to-people peace, and I call it the hot peace. Then you have the cold peace, which is Jordan and Egypt. They have peace treaties, but it's not really that genuine or people-to-people. And last but not least, you have the Lebanon and Syria and the guys who want to boycott and who want to fight more wars. They're mostly failing states. So if you look at these three blocks, you will find that the more peace you have, the better returns you have for your economy. The UAE, Bahrain, and Morocco are outperforming Egypt and Jordan by far. And Egypt and Jordan specifically when compared to Lebanon, because they're similarly the same size, they're outperforming Syria and Lebanon. Egypt and Jordan are outperforming Syria and Lebanon. And even if you take any examples from the past, when Israel used to occupy South Lebanon and it had the security zone, it had its own kind of government at the time known as the South Lebanese Army. If you look at the economics of these people, the economy of these people living until the year 2000, and then you compare their lives after 2000 until today, when Israel withdrew and these guys switched from being under Israeli sovereignty to being under Lebanese sovereignty, you will find out that they had a much, much better life under Israeli government. So the point here is that it's not really hard to notice that the more at peace you live with Israel, the better it is. Your economy is, your stability is, the better your future is. And this is exactly why I make the Arab case for Israel and I put it in a book.
Hussein, thank you for that. That was tremendous, and and we greatly appreciate you sharing the story. And obviously, thank you for your intellectual honesty and obviously your courage. I mean, the transformation is a fascinating story of where you started and where you are now. If I may, I'd like to start with asking, and then we'll start we'll go to the audience and we'll go to Alex as well and talk, ask, I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions, but let me ask a personal question, if I may. What was the reaction, and where are you today, after you broke ranks, as far as your own family and friends? I mean, what was the reaction, you've been in the States, if memory serves, since 2004. I mean, there's been a lot. I mean, where, how are, what was the response and where is the response now of people, obviously you said correctly, you are one of the loudest and important voices out there. But, people back, family, friends, colleagues, old friends, or, if they are anymore, where do they stand?
Well, this is a great question. So as I said, I moved camps. When I was in the other camp, I used to think of Edward Said as my champion. He spoke his eloquent English. He was a professor at Columbia, and and by the same token, we used to vilify Fuad Ajami. This treasonous guy who sold his tribe and his country, and I believe that. I believe that argument. And then when I started reading the books, and especially after, I mean, I had transformed long time before I read his memoirs, his postmortem memoirs. But when you read your Fuad Ajami's memoirs and you compare them to Edward Said's memoirs, you will find out that Edward Said was not really that much of a. I mean, look, number one, he was a Protestant Christian, which is a tiny, tiny fraction of a minority. I mean, Christians are a minority, but a Protestant Christian, where everyone is either Maronite or Greek Orthodox, you're a tiny fraction of the population. He was blue-blooded, came from a well-off family. So he was not really part of the population that he talks about. But when you read Ajami's memoirs, you know, Ajami, I look like Ajami more. I spent my time growing up in Baalbek. He spent his time growing up in the south and in the Burj Hamoud, the suburb of Lebanon. So he, reading him, I imagine myself that I'll be in his shoes, and I understand that many people who were friends will now call me treasonous or vilify me, and I was fine with that. Now, how does this work? I think it works the minute you become confident of what you're saying. When you have enough arguments, when you're strong enough to make the argument that you're making a stand by it, you can come out, so to speak. Uh, all these people who now vilify me or try to impose social shaming on me. This is the most common instrument that they use. They never debate me, and that's the point. I say, listen, you guys, if you have something, just let's discuss it. And they know that in a discussion, there's no way for them to win that argument or that debate. So what they do is that they tend to apply pressure on relatives, people who know me, say, how do you talk to Hussein? He's treasonous and whatnot. But listen, there's an upside because things are changing. And I say this because, for every two hate mails I get at least one support mail. Uh, the Abraham Accords did miracles. Uh, the UAE is not where Emiratis only live. The UAE is where millions of Arabs live, Palestinians, Lebanese, Syrians, Egyptians, you name it. These Lebanese had never seen an Israeli in their lives, and now they're living in Dubai. They go to a restaurant, a Lebanese family is sitting next to an Israeli family. Uh, Abraham Accords really humanized the Israelis as, Israelis, just like people like us. So things have been changing over the past at least 5 years, and I've become the guy who they send their support to because they tell me, listen, we support you, but we're too scared to press like because, they'll come after us. But we totally support what you're saying. So of almost all the people that you know in this line of work, I'm the guy who gets a lot of hate, but also support. And this gives me a better sense, a better gauge, it gives me an ability to put my finger on the pulse, so to speak. Um, and it's been working great. I can say with confidence that if these people are giving the freedom, now mind you, I can't go to Lebanon. It's physically risky for me because if people support peace with Israel, there's no freedom of expression in that part of the world. You will be hunted down physically, and if not physically, the state will come. Lebanon has laws of boycotting Israel. If you are a Lebanese national and an Israeli national comes into the room, you are supposed to leave the room. And it's a legal liability if you start a conversation with this person and stay in the same room with them. So the rules are draconian. And these are the rules. And I mean, we're not even talking about the Islamists. The Islamists come and you add, that he's a Jew. How could you talk to him? Not even Israeli, because when religion comes in, so it becomes really nasty. So myself and people like me cannot really look. If my safety was guaranteed, I would go to the city of Baalbek where I grew up, my maternal hometown. And I would stand in the middle of the square and I would shout and call on everyone to sign peace with Israel yesterday and normalize ties. And I would lobby friends, and I have many connections that I can win over to my side. This is what every normal country does, right? I mean, in this country or in Israel or any normal country, there are people who are for, there are people who are against. Each side pitches its line, and let whoever win. Now, the point in Lebanon is that they say, well, listen, the Lebanese population is against peace with Israel wholesale. Well, it's against peace because the guys who support peace can't really pitch their case to the population. But if you give these guys the freedom to do so, then we can hold a survey and give percentages. So now, from the top of my head, I would say at least 50% of the population in Lebanon is exactly where I am, in terms of peace with Israel right now. And if I want to be more optimistic, I'd say it goes up to 30%. And if you give people like me the chance to, in terms of physical security, the protection to pitch their case, it can easily become 50-50. So so this is the point. And these guys know, look, these Arab countries know that if the conversation starts, they will lose. They will lose the debate. It's not by chance that if you're an Israeli national, you can't go anywhere in Saudi Arabia or in even in Egypt and Jordan, even Egypt that's at peace with Israelis. It's really not safe for you as an Israeli national to show up and walk on the street in Egypt. So there's a reason why they do these things. They don't want the conversation to happen, the people who oppose peace. And as long as we're not talking, you know, we are where we are now.
No, great. Listen, I mean, which is why your views and your perspectives are extremely valuable. I mean, so again, thank you for all you're doing, and we're here to support that, and obviously amplify your message, through the SPME ASMEA circles worldwide. So and so we appreciate that.
Thank
Um,
you.
Alex, over to you before we go to the audience.
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks very much for being with us and for your book and for your courage. And it's very important. The things you have to say are very important. But inevitably I have a lot of questions. And maybe the place to start is at the with something that you just said. If you were to have the opportunity to go to Baalbek and stand on a pillar, what have you there, and make your case, are you more likely to be assaulted or worse there or in Tulkarm or in London? My
Well,
point
that's
being
yeah.
that these attitudes have been exported for one thing, and the rejectionism is now globalized. So how do we improve conditions when the rest of the world is where it is?
Well, that's a great question, Alex. I didn't specifically talk about this, but the last chapter in this book is called "The Radicalization of Arabs and Muslims in America," and uh, this is also close to heart because I am, after all, an immigrant, and I am raising kids in this country. I'm raising them as Americans, and I have access to all these Muslim American slash Arab American. Um, and I have a few conclusions. But to answer your question, the Western Muslim community, the Arab American, or the Muslim American, the Muslim British, the Arab British, they are a different breed. They're a different organism. They think that they are like the Arabs and the Muslims. They're not. So, Ilhan Omar would not be anyone if she goes to Lebanon. She is someone because she lives in this country. The points they make are are shaped by US politics and policies. They're not about the Middle East. Their points is about their position is how America sees the Middle East. In reality, what they talk about is not there. This Edward Said's idea of the binational state, right? One state, both Jews and Arabs living as equal citizens. The the majority of Palestinians themselves reject this idea. The Palestinians are divided into two, Fatah and Hamas. Fatah says two-state solution, Palestine next to Israel. Palestine will be Judenrein, of course, because no Jews are allowed to live in Palestine. And then the refugees will come back so that you add 6 million Arabs to Israel, and then you take all the Jews out of Palestine. So it'll be Arab only next to half Arab, half Jewish Israel. This is the first situation. The other faction is Hamas. Hamas wants the whole thing. No Jews, just the whole thing, Arab Muslim state. Period. So just show me which Palestinian faction speaks like Edward Said, or like, all the people who are protesting on Columbia campus. Just show me where are the Palestinians and the Arabs who support the binational Jewish Arabs. They don't exist. There are probably five of them who are the ones who probably studied here and went back. But the platform of these Muslims and Arabs in Western countries is a world of its own. Now, of course, they end up supporting Hamas. They end up supporting Iran, like we see today. And if you're someone like me, I monitor the Iranian Arabic press, 24/7 and Al Jazeera. They use these guys, you know. Every statement from every senator that opposes this war in Iran is being highlighted on Iranian and Hezbollah media day long. And they use us, they use them, but these guys, I mean, the people who live over here, just like the LGBTQ for Gaza. If when the protests were going on Columbia campus, they had a spokesperson lady, a student who was, giving their demands, and behind her, a guy was standing in a crop top and a kufiya on his shoulders. And I was staring at this guy, and I thought he can't stand 5 minutes in Beirut, which is the most liberal of these capitals, let alone Amman or Damascus. How does he think that this Palestine that he's thinking of and wants to make happen? How does he think he can't stand in Ramallah? If he goes to Ramallah, look in Ramallah, when there's Ramadan, you can't eat in public or drink. Do you think all these guys on campus can handle, living this way? They can't. So this is the point here, is that the Muslim American, now forget CARE. CARE is a specialized lobby group. But I'm just talking and the reason I'm saying this is because I'm raising two children. One of them will go to college soon, and I'm always aware that I don't want them to be part of this. I say, listen, we are proud Americans. We are proud of our Arab heritage. The minute we step outside of our door, we're American only. We don't want any perks or privileges, or we're not victims. We're nothing. So this is important, because otherwise you go down the rabbit hole of, we're victims, we're Arab Americans. And, one thing leads to another. And next thing you know, he wants the colonial American enslaving government to collapse. So I don't want my children to go down this road. So it's like you said, in London, in Washington, in New York, it's something. To your question, if I go to Baalbek or if I go to Tulkarem, but especially in Lebanon, my biggest concern is the minute I set foot in the airport. Because I've been openly on all sorts of Israeli media and TV, and it's documented everywhere. They can take me to court in a heartbeat. The minute I show up, they say, okay, you've been on enemy media, so come here. We're taking you and they take you to the military tribunal, because this is, some sort of treason supposed to be. So this is the debate, I mean, over there, you can't even start the conversation if you can't really go into the country, because the government itself will throw you in prison. Over here, these guys are just, demagogues, and that's that.
And what you're hitting on, Hussein, is really, what all of us talk about is obviously the reality on the ground versus the perceived reality, and the fantasy that has been resurrected on American college campuses and elsewhere, and and the disconnect that exists, which is obviously the lost in translation that all of us talk about, which is clear, and nobody wants to hear the truth, which obviously is is part of. So to that end, have you spoken about these issues on college campuses, and was it received well? I mean, is that happened yet, or you've these views you've had, and you've spoken about these topics even before the book has come out, but have you been able to even articulate such views on American college campuses?
Well, not as much. I was once invited to Ann Arbor, Michigan, by a group of Jewish students, and I mean, I didn't know that it was as bad until I lived it. They said, we didn't advertise your panel because and the where we hung posters, they were removed, and that we move around in like hush hush manner. And I was thinking, this is the first panel in my life. It felt even worse than going on a panel in Lebanon and being scared of Hezbollah. And this is Ann Arbor, Michigan, and these are students who are scared of other students. So it's not like there's I mean, if you're in Lebanon, you're scared of so many things. The Hezbollah thugs, the intelligence services, secret police, all kinds of things will come after you. Over here, only the other students will come after you. I mean, it's not like, the FBI will chase you down or anything. And I was thinking, this is really bad. I mean, these Jewish students had to hide a regular thing, an activity. Everyone can hold a panel and bring whoever they want to bring to speak. So that taught me a lesson. But I didn't really, I haven't been on any campus tours, anything like, in terms of panels and speaking tours.
Great. Alex, I know I cut you off there. You got to follow
No,
up.
no. Let's go to the audience. I think try and give everybody a shot here.
Yes. All right. All good. So there are a bunch of questions. Let me try to consolidate some of these questions for you here, Hussein. Um, one of the common threads or one of the questions that, I guess that people are asking about really, is, to your, one of your last points, you spoke about this in one of your last point about the silent majority. I mean, so, you have, obviously you made the point correctly that there are a lot of people who will subscribe to your viewpoints, but obviously will look to you as the as the voice because their fear of intimidation and whatnot. So obviously, Lebanon is about to go to elections now shortly. I mean, are these views, views of people, as a result of what's happening now with Hezbollah and, and views or looking at the Middle East today and, as it's the changing that are happening, I'm not asking you to be a procrastinate to be a prophet here, but can you gauge as far as obviously surveys are what they are. We know the data, but as far as how this will impact voting when it comes to Lebanon going forward.
So look, to my knowledge, they extended the term of parliament for another 2 years. Justifying the extension by war. They said, there's war and we don't have time to hold election. This is almost final. I'm not sure whether it's finalized yet because someone disputed it, took it to the Constitutional Council, but it's most likely that they're not having an election until 2 years from now. But to answer your question about the surveys and the numbers, the Arab Center in DC, I think that's the name of it. This is the center that's the extension of Azmi Farah's Arab Center in Doha. And, and they're funded by Doha. So they're like, it's on their forms. I'm not making it up. They held a survey about whether people want peace with Israel or not. And the worst number that they have for Lebanon, in case of Lebanon, 9% want bilateral peace with Israel. 9% of the Lebanese. And they use this to say, listen, there's 91% of the Lebanese who oppose peace with Israel. Now, forget that this is a survey sponsored by Qatar and funded by Qatar and whatnot. Even this 9% to me is huge. I just told you the only literature that you have in Lebanon is Edward Said, Chomsky, and Finkelstein. Where did this 9% come from? People are not allowed. I mean, people are not allowed to press like on my social media posts. So where does this 9% come from? So my point here is that with some more fairness and some more accurate gauge of public opinion, the numbers would look different fast. Like you can get at least 1 in 4 who support peace. And now, as a rule of thumb in Lebanon, it is known that the Christians are the biggest fans of peace with Israel. Because the Christians, sort of, because this, like we said, Lebanon was made for the Christians. It's their country. And they don't like to be part of the Arab fight and wars and whatnot. So Christians are the most amenable to peace with Israel And when I say peace, I mean bilateral peace because, many say peace, but what they mean is that we have to wait until the two-state solution, and after that, all the Arab countries go to peace, what they call the Arab Peace Initiative. No, what I say peace, I mean bilateral, unconditional peace. The biggest percent of supporters would be among the Christians. The Sunnis would come number two only because there are Sunni countries that have signed peace. Egypt, Jordan, the UAE. The UAE has a lot of influence in terms of soft power influence. And then last but not least, the Shia, unfortunately, the Shia, they're like the biggest majority of them is still uh, supporting Iran. So, and they're still in the fight. They're launching rockets on Israel as we speak. So this is roughly how it is. But again, if this becomes a free and fair election, if this becomes a free and fair political life, then all these numbers would look different.
Great, thank you. Alex, going to go back to you for a sec.
Um, this is the age of the internet, I'm told. Um, Physical books being what they are. You were lucky to have access to one of the better university libraries in the Middle East or outside of Israel, where there are some very good ones at American University of Beirut. Um, what what should the United States government and other concerned Westerners be doing in order to promote the kinds of ideas that you found appealing to others throughout the Middle East? Um,
Look, I understand that the American University of Beirut, many of its faculty are really anti-Semitic or, against Israel, sometimes even against America itself. And that's unfortunate. But at the same time, there's a big chunk of them that's pro-peace, pro-America, people like me. And like take the American University of Beirut. Now, again, people like me at AUB would not say much. They live there. There's a lot of, physical risk and social shaming. But it's worth in investing in a place like AUB. I think it's totally worth it. And I see that in this town, starting a year ago, we got a lot of money to development. I think that's a mistake. Now, granted, we shouldn't be paying whatever transgender operations. I mean, there's a lot of corruption that goes into this. But the concept, the principle that we support an American university, whether in Cairo or Beirut, I think is worth the money. And mind you, it's not a lot of money. So AUB probably gets like 10 mil a year or every 2 years. So that's like, the amount of money that will break our budget. So it's worth it. In these kinds of programs, you will get people who will benefit from the chance, who will get access to books and literature, who will change their minds, who will change camps. You will get these people, and myself being the primary example here, but I'm not the only one, definitely.
well, one of the things that has been documented over the last 20 years or more is how formerly very significant mechanisms like the Voice of America and the BBC World Service have been captured by the regimes, the totalitarian regimes that they once spoke to. Um, and there have been obviously cuts to all these kinds of things in the last year, maybe not the BBC. Um, Public diplomacy has been a big catchphrase for decades, along with as part of soft power. How do these things get revitalized without repeating the cycle of essentially the wrong people being in charge and repeating um, illiberal regimes' propaganda back to back to these countries in the Middle East and elsewhere at the expense of the U.S. taxpayer?
Well, this is a great question. I myself, when I was recruited here, I came with a TV station that was being set up called Al Harra, funded by Congress. It was in Arabic, and this was 2004. The job of this TV was to give airtime to people like me now, but the Arabic speakers who support liberal democracy. And this is a great idea, and mainly to offset also Al Jazeera, which is the total opposite. Now, this proved to be a terrible idea. I helped set up Al Harra and Al Harra Iraq, and then I quit after 3 years. Uh, the people who were hired to do the work were themselves not liberal or supportive of democracy. Liberal in the sense of the global liberal, not the US liberal, not left and right, like liberal democracy kind of liberal. So these people themselves did not believe in democracy in their countries. They came here only because it was a great job for them. So after 3 years, I moved on, and I thought this was a miserable project, a very bad idea. And even after I, started having some sort of a brand name doing what I'm doing, they never invited me before they were shut down. They were shut down, I think, when President Trump came to power, they shut down all the money. Now they've become a website. I'm not sure where they get their money from. Maybe they still get it from Congress. But these people never invited me because they disagree with what I'm saying, and they don't want it to come from a person who speaks Arabic. So my colleague John Shanzer at FDD, or my colleague Brad Bowman at FDD, they were invited all the time to go on Al Harra, and that's because okay, he was American, with an American name, saying what he's saying. That's America's point of view. But to get someone whose name is Hussein Abdel Hussein, or my friend Hanin Ghaddar at the Washington Institute, or any one of us, the Arabic speakers who support the line I'm in, no, we never went on this channel. And the BBC, by the way, both Arabic and English, I'm never invited on the BBC. No, I know these guys pretend that they're objective and they invite both sides. They never do, because this breaks the image that they have. Every Arab opposes Israel, and when the BBC invites someone, they invite someone who's from an Israeli Hebrew speaker, maybe to their show. They invite an Arab, but to invite an Arab who supports Israel, that's something they don't want to see happen. They invite what's the organization that's the anti-Israel organization, the B'Tselem, they'd invite these guys to badmouth Israel, but they wouldn't invite the equivalent on the other side.
Right. And that's very telling about the blinders that are on, and obviously and even more so important, the work that you're doing, and why it's important to get it out there. I am cognizant of the time, Hussein, and I know that you've been sitting and taking interviews all day long about everything else that's going on in the region, not only about your book, but I do want to thank you for taking the time to talk to us this afternoon. It means a lot, and I appreciate you spending a little time with us to talk about what you're doing. I do hope you can come back. I do also hope that you can come to the conference back again in November. As always, I want to thank my colleague Alex Jaffe for joining me as co-hosting the show, and of course for all of you who joined us this afternoon. I know there were a lot more questions to be asked, so obviously please feel free to reach out to us after the show, and we'll do our best to respond. And Hussein, we look forward to seeing you soon and connecting soon. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, Asaf. Thank you,
Thanks
everyone.
very
Bye bye.
much.